Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:07 on O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in this Monday morning. Tons of more news and information to get to, including a reflection on the Grammy Awards last night, which weren't awful. Actually, that's the headline.
Nice.
Grammy Awards, not awful. Coming up at 7:05, Joe DeGeneva talk about the Biden administration. Awful. At 7:35, Laura Morgan with Do No Harm about how nurses are now under fire from the Democrats in Richmond. At 8:05, Maggie Cleary. She is a former federal prosecutor and has worked with Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin about a new plan Democrats have to cap criminal sentences. Because, you know, anybody looking in real time at the crime problem we've got in Virginia, and the best thing to do is say, you know what, we're being too tough on the people who break the law.
Right.
Let's make sure we don't put them away too long. And then at 8:35, Billboard Chris Elston will join us, talk about an encounter he had with a trans activist over the weekend that was violent. Shocking.
Yep.
It's Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Julie.
Good morning.
It's the city so nice they named it twice. It's the most important city in America, I'm told. New York City. It's the most cosmopolitan of our cities. New York, I'm told, is the most European of all the American metropolises. Have you heard that? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I would agree.
I hear that a lot. It's very European. Europeans love New York.
Yes. Everyone loves New York.
I used to love New York. New York is now.
Do.
When was the last time you were there for an extended period of time?
Probably a couple years ago. So maybe it's not. Yeah.
It's not the same, Boomer. It's bad. New York is a
you're
nightmare.
Gonna pay for that.
New York is a nightmare right now, and even New Yorkers get it. Of course, we saw the spectacle of these illegal immigrants beating on, kicking, and attempting to murder a New York police officer in Times Square. And, of course, Alvin Bragg, the DA there, let them walk the next day, basically, pending their trial. By the way, I saw an update of, I think, four of the illegal immigrants who had been arrested and then, released on their own reconnaissance. They're already headed to California.
Gosh.
They're already,
These are the guys who flipped the bird, you mean?
Yeah, those are the ones.
Yeah.
Those are the ones. It's gotten so bad in New York that they might actually vote for a Republican. I've said this before. Things need to get really bad, and then eventually people's common sense jump in. In New York, it happened back in 92 when they voted for Rudy Giuliani as their mayor, a Republican. In L.A., same thing happened. Dick Reardon was that, at one time in the 90s, we had a Republican mayor of Los Angeles, a Republican governor of California, a Republican mayor of New York City, and a Republican governor of New York State.
Wow.
That's how bad things got coming out of the 70s.
Yep.
And now there are some suggestions that New Yorkers have had enough. They might even go for a Republican candidate for president. They might even go for Donald Trump. At least it appears Donald Trump thinks so. Here he was on Maria Bartiromo over the weekend. Listen to this.
The Republican Party under Trump has become a tremendous success.
Are you going to be able to flip blue states like in New York and in New Jersey? There's a rumor you're going to do a rally in the South Bronx.
I think so, yeah. I think I will do that.
Then when are you going to do that?
I think I'll do one maybe at Madison Square Garden, too. I think we have a chance. New York has changed a lot in the last 2 years. We have migrants all over the street. They're living on Madison Avenue. I mean, nobody can believe what's happened to New York. The people of New York are angry. People that would have never voted for me because I'm a Republican. I mean, they're Democrats. Their parents would they vote for Democrats. I think they're going to vote for me. So I think we're going to give New York a heavy shot. They're very unhappy in New York, what's happening. And they're unhappy with the crime. You take a look at the crime in New York, it's at record levels. The other thing is, and very importantly, New Jersey. I think New Jersey can be flipped. I think that Virginia can be flipped. I think that New Mexico could be flipped. And I think Minnesota could be flipped. And I'm not even sure that everything can't be flipped.
All right. So a couple of things here. First of all, if the Trump for president campaign strategy is to put a lot of emphasis on flipping New York and New Jersey, they better get a better campaign strategist in here. And I'm not saying it can't be done. That shouldn't be the primary focus. When you've got a 10-point lead in Michigan and Pennsylvania, sure, go ahead. Make them spend some money on their turf. All right.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, focus on and by the way, Trump does have a lead in every single one of the battleground states right now, including Wisconsin, which is the closest one of all. But, win Georgia, win Arizona, win Pennsylvania, win Michigan, and then we can start talking about New York and New Jersey. The good news is Florida and Ohio aren't even part of the equation anymore. Remember, like 2 election cycles ago, Florida and Ohio were toss-ups.
Yeah.
Julie,
Yeah.
and now they have flipped 100%. It's not even
I
close.
think it's just interesting what he says there, though. He says, these are people that would have never voted for me because I'm a Republican. I mean, they're Democrats.
Yep.
Their parents were Democrats.
That's right.
But this is not their parents' Democrat Party.
That's right.
And what Democrats are now are global citizens. They don't care about their local area. They don't care about what's going on in their local communities. They'll climate change, the policies will harm people, but it's for the good of the world, right? So
Yeah.
I do think that Trump understands sort of the mindset of Democrats, because I think Trump was a Democrat and he gets that it's no longer the Democratic Party that a lot of Democrats are used to. So
Yeah.
they might open up to a Republican.
I don't disagree with that either, and I think that he's got a good understanding of who these people are and whether they would ever vote Republican anyway. These are the people they hated Mitt Romney because he was supposedly a misogynist
You're
racist, right?
Yeah.
So let's be real here. That said, I do want to take issue with the former president on something. Could we just play this once? It's just the very beginning. I'll tell you when to stop here, Michael, if we could. I just want to hear the very beginning part.
The Republican Party under Trump has become a tremendous success.
Are you going to be able to
Okay,
flip?
let's just pause there for a second. Now, I think I might know what Trump is saying here, and let me help, because I can sort of I speak Trump now and again. I've been known to be fluent in Trump. If by the typical measure of a political party's success, that would be winning elections, if that's the measure you're going for, I think objectively speaking, it hasn't been a good run since 2016.
Right.
There had been a lot of losses racked up in the House. And then the House did a little bit better, and we did actually regain the majority after a devastating loss of the majority in 2018.
Right,
and
by
that
one?
crawled back. Well, it's something. But by many measures, it would be hard to argue that the party writ large, based on electoral success, has done well. But let me say this, if I may. I do think we have a better Republican Party right now than we did before Trump became the nominee, in terms of where we stand on issues, the fearlessness to proclaim those issues,
Yes.
and the new there is a changing face of the Republican Party. We have lost Jonah Goldberg, Bill Kristol, and David French, and Liz
Yes.
Cheney. That is
Yes.
true.
Yes.
But we have gained Republicans who speak much more for common everyday Americans. We have
Yes.
gained more blue-collar union workers. We have gained a lot of people who never used to identify as Republican, and I think in the long haul, that is better for the party.
And we have gained so many incredible reporters that have replaced what you said, David French and Jonah Goldberg, and this sort of old guard.
Oh, I would
sort of
trade
elite.
Molly Hemingway for 10 Jonah Goldbergs.
And I think about, you mentioned it earlier, the Dow Awards. Some of the reporters in that room are breaking the most important stories that then corporate media sort of follows, and they are breaking really important stories. And so I think you're right. The movement itself is better. Maybe not the Republican Party, but the movement itself is stronger.
While there's a little bit more on what's going on in New York, and also there was a great moment on Meet the Press here where, Trump is saying, I could flip New York, I could flip New Jersey, I could flip Virginia. I think Virginia is actually the closest one of all three of those. That's state by state. If you look at the national polls, which we don't spend a lot of time doing, but if you look at the national polls, that tells quite a story for Donald Trump as well. And you're going to want to hear what happened on Meet the Press with Steve Kornacki's left-wing analysis of these numbers in just a moment, because Democrat heads were exploding all over the White House and across this town. You'll hear that in a sec, but first, it's 6:15, WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the 5. Jamie Witten's in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Need a new roof? Honor, respect, and trust your home with Valor. Visit valorhome.com.
WMAL, making sense of the economy because it's your money and your retirement. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
Don't freak out. Don't freak out. It's 6:17. I just had a little bit of a lapse there. You're not an hour early. It's 6:17. All right. As we mentioned, these illegal immigrants who DA Alvin Bragg let out on their own reconnaissance, right, after beating up on camera, kicking, mutilating, absolutely trying to murder a police officer. By the way, you didn't see this in the news. Did you see the video of the New York cops who had they basically lined up all of their patrol cars, their cruisers, and drove up, I believe it was 6th Avenue, almost like a parade, a spontaneous parade and protest with their lights flashing to protest the fact that it's open season on cops. You know, when a DA... Everyone's, well, why should we treat the attack on a cop any different than we treat an attack on anyone else? No. We treat attacks on cops very differently because cops agree to go into danger. They agree to take a bullet on our behalf. And when you target a cop and you attack them brutally like this, we as a society take that incredibly seriously. And when the elected official, the district attorney of New York, just shrugs and says, it's just another day in New York, look, he deserves absolute condemnation.
And he shrugs while at the same time using city resources to prosecute the president over... That's right. That's also part of it, is that he's clearly putting his own political ambitions above the safety of New York police officers.
Meanwhile, yesterday, 2 cops in New York were responding to a disorderly conduct call, and they were assaulted. One cop punched in the nose, left bleeding. There was also a female cop there who was punched in the head. She sustained injuries as well. No details here about the immigration status of the assailant in this case, but that's also kind of irrelevant here when the larger story is that societal breakdown begins with shrugging away attacks on law enforcement. In fact, worse than that, targeting law enforcement. Understand something. The rhetoric from the political left and the Democrats and Alvin Bragg and his political party have been to condemn police officers as the greatest demons of our society.
They deserve it.
They deserve
it. What is the message being conveyed?
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so with that scenario in place in every major city in America, by the way, great Washington Post. Was it Washington Post? I think it was Washington Post. May have been Politico. They have an analysis of crime in major cities in America, but the analysis is Donald Trump, Republicans in Congress, and their allies are trying to make it look like the Democratic Party is soft on crime. So it's a Republican pounce. It's Republicans are noticing the fact that every major American city run by Democrats is a dystopian hellhole.
Right.
But the analysis we get from Washington, D.C. reporters is, wow, Republicans seem to be making a political issue out of this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Meanwhile, with that scenario, with that setting, take a listen to Steve Kornacki on Meet the Press yesterday, analyzing the latest national poll. And again, I want to caution you, we don't spend a lot of time talking about national polls here because that's not how you elect a president. You elect a president with state polls. But we've known for most of the election cycles of the last, couple of decades, that even with Republicans winning the White House via the Electoral College, Democrats tend to do very well in the national popular poll. So now listen to how things stand with the popular poll right now.
Let's just start with the bottom line. When you ask folks, hey, if it's the general election and it's Trump versus Biden, in our poll, Donald Trump now leads Joe Biden by 5 points. Compare that to the last time we polled. Back in November, Trump was ahead then, but it was only by 2 points. It's even more significant when you look at it this way. Over time, we have been testing for 5 years now, going back to 2019, a Biden-Trump matchup. Remember, 2019, 2020, Joe Biden led. He led big in every single one of our polls. For the first time in November, Donald Trump polled ahead in our poll, and now at 5 points, this is the biggest lead NBC has ever had in 16 polls for Donald Trump over Joe Biden. And, of course, undergirding all of this is this question of he is the incumbent, Joe Biden. We ask voters, what do you think of the job he's doing? And look at that, Kristen, 37% approve and now 60% disapprove.
Did you hear? Did you hear the reaction? Kristen Welker, who, by the way, was a moderator of a presidential, she doesn't have a dog in this race.
Right,
and
no.
like, oh. Like she's getting, like she's got food poisoning or something. Oh, it's awful. It's terrible.
After everything we've done to help Biden.
Look at that, Kristen. 37% approve and now 60% disapprove.
Here comes some more indictments. That's all I can say.
That's right.
No, because think about it. I'm only half joking, but I don't know if that will hurt at this point. Think about the last 12 months news cycle, the political news cycle that Donald Trump has endured. And many would argue, well, he brought it on himself. And that's not true. These are all politically motivated prosecutions. But,
that's right.
But with that news cycle, with the kind of torment, the legal torment that he has had to endure with all this, he hasn't even really been campaigning because he's fighting in court. And he's now pulled ahead by 5 points consistently since November. He's been leading Joe Biden. Now, is that because he was so great, or is it because things with Biden are really that bad?
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like the American public have watched the persecution of Donald Trump, but they've also watched these witch hunts for people standing on the lawn on January 6th.
Yeah.
They've seen pro-lifers attacked in their homes, people coming to their homes and with guns ablazing. They've seen pro-lifers go to get 12-year sentences for sitting.
They've seen the use of the judicial system as a political weapon.
And every time this happens to Trump, it helps him.
It does.
Just from an underdog perspective. And when the left, you hear Kristen Welker kind of doing that, does she not get, she's helped this. This is what has happened when the media does not give him a fair shake, when everything is Trump's a Nazi, Trump's evil.
By the way, I jokingly said more indictments are coming. The reality is a conviction will be coming because one data point in this latest poll from NBC News, if the people who were polled were asked if he is convicted of a crime, who do you vote for? And in that measure, if he is convicted, Biden barely ekes out a win in the national poll.
There you go.
So without a conviction, Donald Trump is up by 5 points over Joe Biden. If he is convicted, the latest national poll. Now, I don't think that will actually transpire. I don't think he will be convicted, actually. But if he does get convicted, they claim they won't vote for him. But if it is seen as a witch hunt, politically motivated conviction, again, I think past his prologue, it will actually help him politically. But according to this poll taken right now, if he is convicted, Biden wins. So based on that, let me rescind what I said. I think he will get convicted based on that. It is 6:25, Julie Gunlock.
Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:37 at O'Connor and Company. By the way, I just want to reiterate, because I don't want it to get lost in the shuffle, as we throw out a lot of facts, a lot of information about this so-called Senate border security bill. Two things, paramount importance. Nothing in there for a wall. Nothing at all. So a border security bill that Republicans have agreed to, that Mitch McConnell has agreed to with Chuck Schumer, that Joe Biden loves, and there's nothing in there about a wall, number one. And number two, $20 billion for border security, $60 billion for Ukraine. Okay?
That's right.
Honestly, that's
go.
all you need to know. That's everything you need to know. The rest is noise. It's O'Connor and Company with Larry O'Connor and Julie Gunlock at 7:05 Joe DeGeneva, 7:35 Laura Morgan. Do no harm about how Dems want nurses to take bias training. 8:05 Maggie Cleary on a plan for Democrats to cap criminal sentences in Virginia. And then at 8:35 our pal Chris Elston, you know him as Billboard Chris, who got assaulted over the weekend. Because, have you ever met a nicer, more mild-mannered guy than Chris Elston?
No, he's just very kind, very calm.
Well, he engages with people who are not very kind and not very calm.
Yes.
And we're going to give you those. Let's give those details real fast here. Do we have any of this video that happened to Chris? It's just really a lot of scuffling. So
So basically, what happened is
we'll try to give you some of the audio in a minute, but it's not. It's just a bunch of fighting. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, basically, it's Chris is standing with his placard. He wears like a sandwich board, right? And with the message, kids cannot commit to whatever. You get it. So
yeah, it's got to stay. Usually it says children cannot consent to puberty blockers.
Or it'll say something, the definition of a dad, or the definition of a male, or a definition of a woman. Yeah. Which apparently is so provocative. And a man came up to him and punched him in the face. And hurt him. I mean, it wasn't just like a pat on the head. It was like he punched him in the face.
Oh yeah, sucker punch somebody.
Oh
in
yeah,
the face,
and then this man ran off, tried to cover his face, ran off, jumped on a bus. Chris followed him, and of course Chris has video, constantly going. And then the man started whining like a little girl and saying that Chris was harassing him and trying to hurt him. And the bus driver sadly took the man, the assaulter's side, and Chris was kicked off the bus. So that he'll explain all of that, but that was basically it.
But this, and again, all he did was stand there, and he wasn't touching or. And then people come up and talk to him, and he engages with them in conversation, and he changes minds because he's got an irrefutable argument. Yeah. And so that's the bad news: the fact that somebody like Chris Elston is going to get punched in the face. How about some good news? Finally, after how many years of beating this drum about the lie of gender dysphoria, about the scientific unreality of someone, quote-unquote, born in the wrong body, probably one of the most unscientific and destructive messages that children have been hearing from people in authority. You were born in the wrong body. We now, finally, after all these years of pushing back and championing the message of detransitioners, young girls mostly who have been victimized by this lie and have gone through procedures, whether chemical procedures through pharmaceuticals or actually surgical procedures that have mutilated their body. Finally, after all these years, the New York Times allowed an opinion piece. It's not a news article, it's an opinion piece, but they allowed it through their gateway. And the headline from Pamela Paul is, "As kids, they thought they were trans. They no longer do." And this piece focuses, it's a very long article, but it is under the headline of opinion, which I think is hilarious, because it's not your typical 750-word opinion column. This is a reported article that someone at the New York Times decided to put under the guise of opinion or under the umbrella of opinion. But it details the plight of detransitioned young women who were lied to and were assaulted, were absolutely had much of their physical lives destroyed, and it's going to have a huge impact. Now, it's only going to have a huge impact because the New York Times said it. We, again, Julie, have been saying it for how long now?
Yeah, I know. And let's not forget that there have been whistleblowers from some of these so-called clinics where children, and they are designed for children, where children receive puberty blockers, where they're advised on surgeries. There was a whistleblower who came out and said, there's really no process. A kid comes in, he's disturbed, he has a number of mental health problems. The counselors will sometimes say, like, well, maybe you're trans, and they will send this child down this path. And these children are often dealing with some serious mental issues that have nothing to do with it's separate, and so you introduce this concept. And this whistleblower came out and said, I mean, children are receiving puberty blockers and hormones of the opposite sex, advised on surgeries, when again, they might have dysphoria, they might have autism, they might have some conditions that are sort of, make them open to these concepts. And nope, the New York Times didn't care about that. And that whistleblower was attacked. Right. And IWF, Kelsey Bowler, has been producing these incredible documentaries for years, documenting the cases of detransitioners. So, yes, I'm glad the New York Times is finally catching up to what many of us have been warning about.
Yeah, and our friend columnist Emily Zanotti points this out, and we said, you remember the first lawsuit was about a year and a half ago, I think, where one of these young women sued Kaiser or sued a hospital of some sort. And that's going through the legal process right now. But Emily Zanotti is correct. She said, you know what the difference right now is compared to a year ago? A year ago, the stuff that's detailed in this New York Times column was called essential health care. How dare you get in the way of a child and her essential health care? Now the New York Times is saying, oh, maybe we're going down the wrong path. Why? Because of trial lawyers. The lawsuits are what's going to make the difference here. I don't care, whatever it is to protect these children and to get us back from the cliff that we were hanging over. A good reminder, State Senator Danica Rome in Virginia. If you agree with what you're seeing in the New York Times, and as you as a parent would like to not walk your child down this
non-affirming, if you are a non-affirming parent.
That's right. Danica Rome would not only make you the bad guy and criminalize your behavior, but engage and empower teachers and school administrators to get in the way of your relationship with your child. That's playing out right now in Richmond. I want to remind you that at 8:35, Chris Elston, Billboard Chris, will be our guest. There's a little bit more of him in the news. He testified recently about blocking these transition programs, and I want you to listen to a little bit of this. It went viral, and I want to ask him about this. There's so much to talk to Chris Elston about as this story is starting to now turn, as the giant cruise ship is making a 180-degree turn in the water. It's going to take a while, but we'll get there. Listen to Chris Elston here.
My name is Chris Elston. I'm a father of 2 girls. And for the past 2.5 years, I've been on a very unique journey, traveling all across North America, going to dozens of states and provinces, having conversations like a crazy person, out on the street and at universities, about what I consider to be the greatest child abuse scandal in the history of modern medicine. Our children are being harmed psychologically and physically because of an ideology that teaches that just because they defy sexist, regressive stereotypes, that they must have been born in the wrong body. What an abusive thing to say to a child, that they were born wrong. Can you imagine telling your child they were born wrong? What does that even mean? The body positive message we should be sending is that there is no right way to be a boy or a girl. If a girl wants to climb trees and play in the dirt and throw around a football, wants to be an engineer when she grows up and hates wearing dresses, well, guess what? She's 100% a beautiful girl. We all knew this 5 years ago. Yet this ideology teaching that our children are trans has captured the entire Western world, yet no one can even define what it means to be trans.
Yeah, thank you. And there's more to that. It's a great video. We'll post it up for you as well. We'll talk to Chris Elston at 8:35. And what he just articulated there, Julie, that used to be, like he said, about 5 years ago, that was the liberal position, by the way.
That's right. That's right. One other thing that Chris Elston, I think, is really good at is explaining how, because a lot of people sort of say, how could parents allow this to happen to their kids? The medical community lies to parents. The medical community says if you love your kid and if you don't want them to commit suicide, you will do this. You will affirm this. And he's very good at that, because I think it's really sad to think that, maybe hopefully sooner than a decade, but in a decade there's going to be a look back at this, and we're going to agree that this is the worst child abuse scandal of modern medicine. And some parents will have to live with the fact that they went along with this, but they were lied to by the medical community, who should know better.